So I believe a lot of the mishires are because the CEO, me, didn't do our job.
I think culture, as I've talked to a lot of other executives, is a critical foundation for building teams.
One of the things over time I learned about culture is it's got to be really unique and kind of weird.
What is the hardest executive role to hire for?
In enterprise software, I think it's marketing.
Taylor Swift was on stage and I turned to everyone. I was like, did Nick hire the real person? The entire hour, I was like, dude, we just had Taylor Swift at this concert. Only afterwards I realized it was an impersonator.
These back channels are so critical. Doing them early before you've kind of fallen in love with the kid. Don't do your back channels when you've already made your decision. That's just a waste of time. The right executive for the job makes an impact right away.
Welcome to Whispered Hiring, the podcast where we talk with senior leaders about how they find, vet, attract, and grow go-to-market talent. I'm Andy, founder of Whiteboard. Today, I'm joined by Nick Mehta. Nick is one of the most inspiring leaders I know. He just wrapped an amazing run at Gainsight where he defined the category of CS. I met him at, I think it was the second Pulse conference where I got to watch Nick on stage singing to Taylor Swift, and I knew some great folks that had joined him from Box as well too. I learned about, dinners, community, just bringing people together from Nick it's inspired me in a lot of ways. Nick's also wrote and spoken extensively about careers and networking. And if you have checked out some of Whispered's playbooks, you'll see his thoughts woven throughout. He's got a lot of great podcasts. So today I'm excited to deep dive with Nick on how he builds great teams. Nick, great to see you.
Andy, it's awesome to see you. I remember those early days too. And you've all just been such a first principles thinker. So I love learning from you.
I'm excited for this one. I've been waiting for a while. So congrats, man. And congrats on the run you had at Gainsight.
Thanks. Yeah. Seems so funny though. I stepped on August 20th and it seems like a long time ago now. So, but I appreciate having the chance to be part of that incredible community and company.
You've inspired so many people. At Gainsight, one of the things that really stood out to me when I first met you was the culture you build, like the excitement you bring. And I knew some of your senior leadership team as well too, Allison, Ashvin, Anthony. They've all become friends. I think culture, as I've talked to a lot of other executives, is a critical foundation for building teams. Before we dive into how you hire, I'd be fascinated to kind of hear your thoughts on what is a great executive culture and what do you need before you start thinking about bringing on great execs?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because culture is such a tough one because it's like so open-ended. Hiring is a little clearer. A big part of the challenge is I think I'm a big believer in pretty much everything in life. You have to define your why, right? What's the why? And we all know let's start with why. If you haven't seen the Simon Sinek talk, right? It's great. And for me, I think the key thing is with culture, like, why does culture matter to you? Like, one of the things that I think worked for us at Gainsight is people getting into their why and being very vulnerable about it, right? So it's like, what's my why? Well, let's just do the therapist chair and say, okay, he was a very lonely kid, didn't have any friends growing up, kindergarten through 12th grade, ate alone every day. And so people not feeling lonely was part of his why, right? That's kind of like only after I'm 48. So it took a long time to understand in hindsight what brought me here. And then what did that mean? Well, okay, for me, the culture of the company was like part of the why. It wasn't actually just to make the company successful. Some people, I think, I respect it. Some people, it's like, hey, I want a successful company, therefore I need great people, therefore I need a great culture so I can attract those great people, right? Good for that. And I like when people are very honest about that because I think one of the challenges with culture is where it doesn't feel like there's a deep alignment between the why of the founders or CEO or whoever, and then the company, and then what the culture is. And then it feels very thin. That's why you end up with these very like plastic cultures that feel like, oh, I just found it on somebody's website. I'm just going to copy it, versus, you look at, obviously Bridgewater, which is a very famous hedge fund for folks that don't know, yeah. Ray Dalio. And like their culture is exceptionally well-defined. And some people hate it and some people live by it. I would think one of the things over time I learned about culture is it's got to be really unique and kind of weird. Those are the ones that really stand out. Then it becomes clear, should you work here or not? Like our company values were, things like childlike joy, golden rule, success for all. If you were the kind of person who just wanted to make a ton of money and kill the competition, you would see those on our website and literally never even apply. And I think that's success because those people would not have fun there and they also would not connect with the people there. And so I think a side of a good culture is it actually makes it really clear whether somebody fits, whether it should be there.
I love it. I remember you and I talked a lot when I was at Culture Amp because you guys were using the software and thinking about that. We always had this belief that if a value was something that there was no obvious con, right? Like do good work, it was not good. And I think you took it a step further, which I really liked, which is like the values in culture should actually repel some people. We had a really cool guest on, Heather Doche from Signal Fire Talent, and she said, I'd say 70% of people that apply to Whispered, we ask their dream job, and they say OpenAI and Anthropic, right? And her point was those have totally different cultures.
I was going to say the same thing. I'm like, how can you possibly believe that those are the same? Yeah, my gosh.
One's 996, focused on consumer, and the other one's very enterprise, very different.
And a different vibe. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's a really good test, actually, a cultural litmus test. Which door do you choose? And Google could be a third door.
Ah, you're right. Now it is now is a legit third AI door.
Legit third door, yeah.
I love that.
Grok is a fourth door. So
you built a great leadership team. They had a lot of longevity. I sense that they've all stayed in deep touch with you. How did you? One thing I believe is alignment is critical before you do that. How did you get your leadership team aligned?
It's a constant thing, right? Like it's, because the leader, I did Gainsight for 13 years. So I don't know how many leadership teams I had. It's sobering to even count. You mentioned some of the earlier ones, Allison Pickens, Anthony Canada, Ashwin Vaidyanathan. And then you look at then there were leadership teams after that. We had an incredible luck of selling to Vista Private Equity. I had new leadership teams as I went through that. I brought in new people. And so, yeah, it's that cheesy expression about a river, right? It's always changing. And it's the same thing here. The leadership team's always changing. So what did we do? Well, I think one thing is that, you have to respect that it's always changing and assume that as new people, especially key people come in, you have to kind of be willing to have beginner's mindset, which was actually one of our values, and kind of reset the thinking on it. Now, I had a secret weapon, who is the one, very few things in my career will I be universally good. I have the best coach ever. Her name's Kaylee Clamp-Borner, and she is the one of the goats of coaching, and her dad is one of the most famous coaches ever. And so she was my coach, and I would bring her in to do kind of executive team alignment. And over the years, I learned some stuff myself. I'm nothing compared to her, but learned things about questions that open people up, right? A simple question actually that we don't have to do right now, but you can do, and it's a great question that Kaylee taught me, is 3 rounds of this question with your management team. If you really knew me, you would know X.
This is you keep asking why.
If you really, really knew me, you'd know X. If you really, really knew me, you'd know X. Now, I know that's so you're going to be like, Nick, that's an obvious, simple question. Do it. In my experience, 100% of the time on the third round, people are crying in a vulnerable opening way. And by the way, you should do this so people feel safe and you have a good culture. Don't do this for people that don't feel ready. So I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. But oh my gosh, there's techniques like that are really good at getting people to open up and align. Then you get into the tactical stuff like goal setting and all that. And I don't think I was ever great at it. I think I'm okay at that. But I think the human alignment really matters.
That is powerful. I know Allison from your leadership team was at Stanford Business School where they do all the touchy-feely and
it's like touchy-feely. Exactly. Yeah.
What is the hardest executive role to hire for?
Oh, you're asking such good. No surprise because this is what you do. In enterprise software, I think it's marketing. Well, I will say one way to think about it is over 13 years, Nick, which role did you have the most of? Which means you screwed up. And it's not because those people that you hired weren't good. They were good. It's actually because you didn't know what you needed. And I'd say amongst a lot of software CEOs I know in B2B, they screw up in the marketing role over and over again. And I don't think it's the marketer's fault. I think it's the CEO's fault.
I could not agree more. We've got a whole playbook on how do you ask those questions. I was talking to a super senior marketer and he's like, you have to have a CEO that's willing to take risks and fail, which you were, man. You did that over and over and over again with Anthony. Like you did stuff that people would be like, that's crazy, but it worked.
Totally.
And I was talking to this guy, Guillaume, I don't know, G Caban or whatever. I don't know if you know him, but he does like works with Ramp, works with different people. And he's like, most CEO, G, yeah, most CEO, I was like, how do you determine if you're going to work with the CEO? And he said exactly like most CEOs, like he's like, if I take 8 risks and fail on all of them, will you be okay? And I feel like Nick and Anthony, in my earlier experience on Gainsight, you guys took crazy risks. You did things like build a conference for a function that didn't even yet exist, which some people should be shot on, but you did it. And versus like plain vanilla stuff. And it was awesome.
I know thank you. And Anthony's one of the best ever, actually the best ever, in, I'd say B2B marketing, and still a dear friend, really different. But if you kind of looked at after Anthony, who was our early CMO, I had a lot of people I brought in who were really talented and I would recommend over and over again. But if they're watching, it's like, it's the problem is me, not you, where it's like, I don't think we really understood what we need. So I'll use this as an example. So this is like a perfect example of hiring. Anthony had a kind of a right-hand person, Mike Mannheimer, who went on to be you met him, right?
And I know Mike really well. Yeah.
Right. I'm still in touch with Mike. I've told him most of the story. I told him all the story. And I remember after Anthony was stepping down, I was thinking about, bringing outside CMO, et cetera. And he said, and the reason, the on paper reason was we needed more leads, right? Every CEO says, we need more leads, bring me more leads, people. And so I'm in, Mike lives in Phoenix. He's got his whiteboard. He draws a little circle. And you don't need to know too much about Gainsight. We sold software to customer success teams, right? And back then there weren't that many. So Mike draws a circle. He's like, this is the number of customer success teams out there. This is the number of people we've marketed to. Basically, we've saturated our market. Nick, the reason you're not getting more leads is there aren't more leads to get. I was not smart enough to actually listen to Mike and brought in several other awesome CMOs over the next few years. And my fault, like the leads didn't go up, and of course, like brought a new CMO. So you keep Groundhog Days, same thing, right? And so a lot of CMOs.
One thing I was always really impressed with you, I said the TAM of CS was this. Nick made it bigger because he went out and sold the vision of CS to Cisco and to people.
Totally, all these, and you can only like do that so far. And so that's the thing is like, I think, the lesson for me is that you have to really define that job, not just, we're a company, we need this role, but it's like, what practically can they do? Sit down and be like, what practically is possible? Think in first principles of all the things about what you need. And you might not end up saying, I need that job. You might say, I need a different job. I think new founders, by the way, of these new companies are doing this really well. They're not all like, I need a sales leader or marketing. They're just like, or even CS, right? Which we could talk about. They're just saying, from a first principle perspective, what do I need for this company? And when you don't do that as a CEO, you're doing a disservice to your shareholders and to the candidate themselves. So I believe a lot of the mishires are because the CEO, me, didn't do our job.
I could, not that you didn't do your job, but I couldn't agree more that like marketers fail often not because of something they did. Mannheimer was great. I remember actually calling him up one time. I was like, Gainsight had built this jobs for CS community. And I was like, dude, how'd you do that? And he explained to me like how he wired the Indeed APIs, and I learned so much. Okay, you said there were no questions off the table. I got one for you.
Go.
Marketing is more successful when you can take real risks. As you take on an investor and get more mature, like a Vista, and growth expectations start to get locked in and your company starts to mature, does the amount of risks you can take on marketing go down?
Yes, but not because of an investor like Vista. I think the fundamental thing is you can take more risks early in your company and when you're growing really fast, or when you're growing really fast. I'll tell you, do you know what my greatest regret in Gainsight is ever? Do you know what you want me to tell you?
I could never guess, but I'm excited to know.
It truly is very simple. It's not listening to Anthony, our first CMO. I don't know if AK is going to be watching this, but in 2015, we had like a whopping probably 15 million of ARR. and we had raised, whatever, 40 or 50 million bucks. Maybe we had 20 or 30 in the bank. And he said, for Pulse, our conference this year, he booked Backstreet Boys for the party or whatever. And it was like 750 grand. And I was like, no, we can't do that. It doesn't make sense. We're earning too much money. And of course, we never did Backstreet Boys later on. We could never afford them again because we had to get more and more optimized, right? Now, I'm tongue in cheek, like that wouldn't have changed our company. That would have been really fun, but wouldn't have changed our trajectory. But those risks that you can take when you're really young are harder later, especially if, most companies decelerating growth. It's pretty natural, right? So yeah, you want to take a lot of risks early. Now, I think on the margin, CEOs can take risks later too. Like there's little risks that don't cost, how you communicate, your public persona, what you speak about at your conference, being more cutting edge on your messaging. So there's risks that involve capital. Those are harder as you get more mature. There's risks that involve you taking a personal risk. You always have that in your control.
Dude, I love this. I remember the second Pulse when Taylor Swift was on stage, and I turned to everyone. I was like, I've only heard this person once on the radio. Clearly, Nick knew his music better than I did. I was like, did Nick hire the real person? And so for like the entire hour, I was like, dude, we just had Taylor Swift at this concert. Only afterwards I realized it was an impersonator. But that
one of my happiest moments is how many people we had a really good Taylor Swift impersonator 2015. I rewrote Blank Space, which is one of her famous songs, to be about customer success, and then she performed it. And I was so happy that these people all somehow thought we could afford Taylor Swift. So now, funnily enough, if we could afford Taylor Swift then, we definitely couldn't afford her now. So we should have got her then.
I love it. Before we dive into hiring, I have one more kind of fun question. When I asked you what was the hardest role to hire for, and you didn't say CS, I love the honesty. I'm curious where you think the CS profession is now. Like I was talking to a top talent partner the other day, and they were saying like a lot of these hot startups are just rolling it into sales. Mm-hmm. And you hear a lot of buzz right now around all these $0 to $100 million AI startups that haven't even thought about CS, and they're going to get smacked in the face by it. But I'm seeing a lot of great senior CS people kind of struggle in being third fiddle now for more than I've seen in a long time. I'd be curious your take on the CS profession and the advice you have for our senior CS listeners.
Yeah, and I think there's multiple pieces of this. Like there's the job, the importance of retention, and then there's the need for a leader and where they fit. And then there's the actual like motion of what they do. Okay, so let me break it into three parts. What we are in AI now, I think every investor you talk to, they are like, yeah, retention is going to be really important. Because there's a very unique thing that's happening that not everyone fully appreciates. Companies, big companies, small companies, have been told you have to buy AI technology by their boards. Mm-hmm. So they're buying a lot of stuff. So therefore, the vendors are growing really fast. Because they have infinite capital. It's a little bit crazy, right? It's like if you told actually, probably the best analogy is like COVID with consumer, where it's like, of course, restaurants boomed because everyone got a lot of people got thousands of dollars of stimulus checks in the mail.
I've been using the Peloton example all the time, right? Like this is
exactly Peloton. And so okay, step one, is retention going to be important? Absolutely. We're going to have a massive retention wave within the next few months or next maybe year. Retention issues.
Yeah.
So that's clear. Do you need somebody who is thinking about that? Absolutely. Like you will. Where should they report? That's this whole it doesn't report into sales. If I were a CS person, I'd be like, you should not care about that. You should care about, is this a great company? Is this a great product? Sheryl Sandberg had that. I think the quote came from Larry Summers. I think that there's this famous quote, when she was offered the job at Google, when you offered a seat on the rocket ship, don't ask which seat. Yeah. Like it is so not smart thinking to care about who you report to or even your title right now, right? Like you think about it, it's a little easy in retrospect, but I know I have friends who joined Anthropic a year ago, right? And they joined as a VP of this or director of that, and they were CEO before. That person is going to both financially but otherwise have just made the best career decision of their lives, right? Like and you same thing with OpenAI. And so I think people that are focused on reporting structure and title are doing themselves a disservice.
I agree
Maybe it's a
completely.
little bit like,
Everybody I say it does not matter. It matters who you report to, and do they
right, a
understand your
boss,
function? Yeah.
are they a person that is smart, that cares about what you do? Yeah. But then I think the last part's the most important. And this is a big part of like, for folks thinking about getting a job. I think the thing is not, you have to realize some things transfer. I wrote about this recently. Some things from all of our past are going to be relevant for the future. So for example, I don't know, like, culture, organization, prioritization, those things are still going to matter. But if you go in saying this CS playbook from before matters, and I'm a person who literally wrote some of those books. So I'm saying this, some of the things of those books no longer apply, right? As a simple example, yes, AI is going to get better and better at a lot of parts of what humans can do. Not all, but not all jobs, but tasks for sure. If you are the person who is thinking deeply about how to leverage AI in every part of your workflow yourself as a leader, if you're getting hands-on and using Zapier, N8N, you're maybe using Cursor, Lovable, Replit, you're building stuff, you are the leader of the future. If you're the person, I know somebody who actually recently was telling me that they're like, oh, I went to this AI company. They didn't have a marketing lead team and a sales team. I didn't know who to go to for X, Y, and Z. I'm like, that's the old world. If you assume that you need somebody, you might be doing the wrong thing. Like, honestly, like shouldn't assume you need an assistant. Don't assume you need a chief of staff. Now you might need them. Like you might get them. That's great. Don't assume you need any of that. So the people that are not able to go back to first principles, it's going to be much harder for you.
I love that so much. I think the point on who you report to and being open and being flexible is interesting. It's not an ageism thing. I think it's a flexibility, a mental flexibility.
Flexibility. That's the right word. Flexibility.
So we were talking before we hit record on, how I think maybe I would frame it as how do you design an executive role? You were kind of mentioning a little bit of like, do you even need it in the first place? I'd love to have you kind of talk through your thought process on designing and like, when do you need an executive role?
Yeah. I mean, so it's interesting because I guess a lot of this comes down to the type of company you're in. So if you're in a more mature company, there's often this like tendency to be like, well, other companies like us have these roles. Now that's not a crazy logic because, of course those other companies aren't dumb. But I think in general, companies aren't optimized. They're not always well run. So a simple example, like we'll go back to marketing as an example, like there's a lot of CEOs I know who are like, I don't need a overall head of marketing. I need a demand gen person who might report to CRO, and I need a brand person who reports here. Sometimes I need them all layered into one person, sometimes not. One thing we shouldn't forget is all organizational decisions were all made based on some situation at some time. I think you probably know this, Andy, but like a lot of corporate organization goes back to like General Motors, like 100 years ago. Literally, like a lot of the way companies run, hierarchies, et cetera. And so it's not obvious that every role needs to be constructed the same way as your competitors or other companies or whatever, right? So that's point number one. Point number two is, I think the construction of roles in the organization will change all the time. People make those jokes about constant reorgs. The reality is it actually makes sense unless you're in a super stable business that doesn't change, right? Sometimes you really need sales and CS to be aligned together. So one should report to the other. Sometimes you need them, you're in it to be totally separate because like a simple example would be like in the early days of a company let's say a company is trying to get focus or attention. They want the CCO report to the CEO so they have more hands-on. Later on, you know what? I need to get back to growth and I need them together, And so I think thinking about like the business priorities and all, one of the things that's a good tactic is the org chart without names. I didn't come up with this idea. I don't remember who I got from that. But the idea is basically sometimes there's a tendency to say, oh, I've got Susan and, Allison and Bob and Jim and Arvind and whoever. Okay, what other person do I need? Or what should report in one of those? And an alternate is to say, okay, well, my business right now, we need to like be building better products. We need to be, moving up market and we need to be like optimizing our margins. So what are the roles I need for that? It's a hard exercise for CEO to do, but I think doing it without names so that you don't get like beholden to just like the inertia of what you have right now.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Is there ever a time when you've said, I'm going to buck the conventional trend on org design?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. There are a couple little ones. I wouldn't say I was like did anything radical, but a couple little ones we did. One was we did the marketing split thing. That really, meaning no CMO. That's really under Chuck, who was my successor. But like when he was my president before, and he like split that up, and so we different functions. We did what heretic. I put our CCO under our CRO.
Wow, at Gainsight.
No, that was like a couple years ago or a year and a half ago. And again, it was situational. It was like, okay, I wanted to get more alignment because we had become a multi-product company. So there's like, Gainsight has like 5 products or something like that now. And so we're doing a lot of cross-sell. And so I wanted that better collaboration. So that's one where it's like, whoa, you did something out of left field. And then another one, which actually worked out, was really good for a long time, was the my first chief of staff, or not one of my chief of staff, Robin, who you know, became our chief people officer. So that's one that's like you're doing something that isn't, you're not just taking somebody that was from a function and promoting them. You're actually taking somebody and moving them into a job that on paper is very different. So I think those were actually interesting little wrinkles. Beyond that, I think most of it was pretty standard.
Yeah, but I love it. I mean, this is such an important point. I hear so many candidates, like I can't tell the number of CMOs that are like, I will not work for a CRO. I have to work for a CEO. And I'm like, come on, like it's just, and I think the similar thing, even hearing it from you is so powerful for, you can be a phenomenal CCO. You can represent the customer. You can be operationalized in that journey, but it doesn't matter who you roll up to as long as you're empowered, I think is such an important point.
It's interesting. I was at hosted a dinner last week, and we were talking. There was a CHRO there, and she was former CHRO, and she was big time CHRO, like big companies and all that. And she said something, and it made me laugh. I was like, "Oh my god, that's exactly it." She's like, "Can we end all of these people saying I need a seat at the table?" That term is like, frankly, it's like a bit of a red flag because it's like those are the people who often shouldn't have the seat at the table because there's no table. That doesn't, what matters is like, okay, I'm doing something important. My boss respects me. My work is recognized, all those kinds of things. There's no seat at the table. That's not even how it works. Frankly, like you probably know this too, Andy. I'm sure you felt this. When a CEO has people report to them, some of those people aren't that influential. It's just the org structure. Sometimes other really influential people are one level down. You know, that's why like a lot of CEOs now they're like, I don't really care. Reporting is not the main thing, you know? So yeah, seat at the table. Let's ban the expression.
I would love to. That is so many candidates. I'm creating a list of buzzwords where you're like, don't say those things, but that's definitely on that list. That's a great one. I was thinking we shift to how talent finds you, but before we do, I'm curious, like, do you have any philosophies on how you find talent yourselves on that side?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm some rocket scientist on this, but I think one temptation people have is when they have a search firm, which you often use later and as you go further. And I'm actually a fan of search firms. There's a temptation that like, okay, all these candidates, I need them right away. And I've had this, by the way, I've absolutely had this. And like, why am I meeting these candidates that maybe aren't the perfect fit early on? And most search firms will give you a few candidates early for calibration to say, oh, okay, look, you need to learn what you like, you know? And so I think one thing you could do is, even if you're not using a search firm, is really do that calibration process. Figure out what you like. And that, so meaning pick a field, whatever you're looking at, let's say it's CRO. Figure out 5 great CROs that you can't hire. Meet them. Learn about what makes them tick. So your mind is then creating your own spec. Ask them, oh, who's the next great CRO out there? Go meet them. They probably aren't available. figure out who the next great CRO is, and you will find somebody in this process. By the way, it's extremely effective to tell people, oh, I know you're not available, but I just wanted to meet you. Eventually, people will say, well, actually, I am available. Tell me more.
I did that last night. I needed to do some. I needed to do some customer research on non-actively seeking people, so I pinged 20 absolute hitters, and 15 of them were like, "Yeah, so actually, we should talk."
That's exactly. By the way, everyone is like always looking in some way.
One thing you've spoken a lot on is how to network, how to like get into people. I think you and I share a similar philosophy on don't just show up and be like, "Hey, Nick, do you know any jobs?" But I'd be curious your take on like how do people network into you, and then like is there career advice you give to people generally as well too?
Yeah, I mean, so I think I have empathy because like sometimes somebody needs a job right, and like and especially like the further down the ranks, like it's like this, as a leader, you have to be. I try to be respectful. It's like, oh my gosh, they need a job, So like sometimes it's very clear. It's harder, unfortunately, to help because these things take a while.
Yeah.
And so I think a couple things, if you are like in the process of, I need a job, what I always tell people when they reach out to me is, okay, market's extremely selective. So look at your background. What's really going to stand out for your next employer? You worked in healthcare tech, you worked with SMBs, you're really good at onboarding, whatever. Okay, great. Make a list of 25 companies where you think you'd be a fit. Based on the very specific, not just like, oh, Google, Apple, like where you'd actually be a real fit. Go find all the people that know those companies, get hyper targeted emails that you send to the person that knows that company that you can forward. That's something like, if I was a seeker and you were you're my friend, and you're helping me get a job, I'd say, hey, Andy, I saw you know somebody at so-and-so company. Here's 3 bullets about why I think I'd be a fit. I saw they're looking for somebody. Can you forward this along? Then I send that email to you. You send that to your friend at that company. And that works. Because essentially what's happening is hyper-targeted, warm intro, not generic and not cold intro. So that's what, if they are further in, they need a job now. What I, of course, recommend is if you don't this is the time to go network. So if you don't need a job, or if you're in a job that you don't really like that much, don't quit your job right now. It's not a good time. Don't quit your job, but go network, go meet people and say, long term, here's the kinds of things I want to do. And then nurture. That's the other part, nurture. So, okay, you met, let's say I was Indy, I'm trying to network with you. We have a great meeting. And then, a month, 2 months later, not like a week later, but a month later, 2 months later, Andy, look, oh, I saw that thing, or I saw this article that might be relevant to you. Don't make it so clear, make it real, make it a real reconnect, like something legit relevant. Andy, I know you're into X, right? Like this kind of thing. So let me send you something. Or I thought about your last startup, Andy, and like around email and people using their attention in email. Check this thing out. Somebody just created something around this. And what that does then is you will then say, oh, it's so great that you reached out. In fact, I was just thinking about you because I actually just heard about this company that might be somebody you might want to meet. And so nurture is super important.
I couldn't agree more. By the way, you and I met because I kind of did this. I was wrapping up a failed startup and I had box on the list of places that I were big enough that I could build out like an operational CS motion in Herstein. So somebody who I've never met again was like, oh, I know this guy, John Herstein, put me in touch. I met him. John sent me to your conference. You and I met and did all that. But it's like being specific on how people can help you is so powerful.
Totally.
We talked a little bit before we started recording on the hiring process. I'd be curious, what are you looking for in hiring process? And do you have a favorite interview question to assess that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I suck at hiring because I've been in that I've hired a lot of people that were great people that weren't the right person for the job. So we've already talked about defining the role and all that. I'm getting better over time, I think, maybe. One of the biggest things I look for is self-awareness. I think this is just so important in a leader. So I'll just tell you the thing that that I do, for me, it's worked. Hey, let's imagine I was, how are you? Hey, Andy, it's like, you know how, work is, you've worked for a while. I'm going to do back channels. When I talk to the people that are big fans of you, Andy, what are some of the things they're going to say about you? Okay, great. And so that's not a theoretical. It's like when I talk to the people that are big fans, there's a book called Who, where what I'm doing is it's slightly adapted, but modified from that book. Great book. And, but Andy, like you are awesome, but like we all have detractors too. I have detractors for sure. You probably have detractors. When I call your detractors, what are they going to say? And then you say whatever. And I say, and by the way, Andy, are there any detractors you think I should reach out to?
Huh. Interesting.
Now, okay. So then I go reach out to anyone you've volunteered, plus obviously a lot of back channels. And then I say, hey, Andy, like, then I ask the back channel person. Because people will always say things about what other people would say. They're very loath to say critical things on their own. So I say, imagine I'm doing the back channel with like Susan. Hey, Susan, I just called Andy. Like, oh yeah, what was like working with him? Blah blah blah. By the way, what would people that were detractors of Andy say? Like everyone has a detractor. What would they say about him? So these back channels are so critical. Also, my own opinion is doing them early, before you've kind of fallen in love with the kid. I do back channels where people call me for they want to ask me back channel something, and they'll be like, "Hey, just calling to say about so and so, Joe. I just want to see what it was like working with Joe. He's really great. I'm just trying to check the boxes on this back channel." I'm like, "Why are you even doing this call? Like, you literally are asking me, and you've already made up your mind. Call me earlier when you haven't made up your mind." A great entrepreneurs, I thought they'll text me about somebody I've worked with, and they'll be like, "Hey Nick, what did you think about so and so?" And they'll ask me like, "Were they one of the top 5 marketers you've ever worked with, or salespeople, or whatever?" And I'm like, "Oh, you've already met them?" They're like, "No, I haven't even met them yet. They were just on the list of potential interview candidates." And I love that, because they haven't even fallen in love with them. Don't do your back channels when you've already made your decision. That's just the way to sit there.
I've interviewed 35 C-level people on this podcast. I continually hear more senior people do them earlier in process, which is so powerful. You verbalized why, which I love. How do you balance that with not blowing somebody up? The best candidates are there.
Be ethical. So the two things, number one, be really careful if they're still in a job, and check with the candidate. So I think there's two different versions of this. Like there's if I've spoken to the candidate and you want to do back channel, absolutely tell them and get their permission and just ask them. And if they say no, don't do it. Now it's easier if you haven't spoken to them, because it's not like a back channel. It's like, "Oh, I don't even know if they're looking. I'm just curious what you thought of Joe. I don't even know if he's available. I just heard he's good." That's easier. That's actually why it's good to do it before. You gotta be ethical about that person and not blowing up their current job.
Wow, I heard that from somebody else too that we've got coming on the podcast, where they basically like, it's actually, this is interesting. They said it's actually illegal to do it without checking if they're in your ATS. But so I was actually really interested. I think your point is, so you're basically like this. I liked your phrase of, "Hey, they were on the sheet," or like, "I saw a name and I'm just curious how you thought about it."
They're not even looking, talking to us or anything. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. That is powerful. Know that we're running out of time. I could probably spend an hour with you on this stuff, but I think the last one we were kind of geeking out on was quick hire, quick fire. I'd be curious your take on that to wrap it up.
Yeah, this is an interesting evolution in my own thinking too. I earlier in my career, like I think I went for a walk with Entrepreneur also about this, and we were like, "Oh my God, do we just get cynical?" And as you get older, where you have enough mistakes, where basically, you hire people. I'm talking about a leadership level. So these are experienced people. You hire people and you have these expectations. And I think a lot of people do what I would do, which is oh, it's been a month, but like they're just getting their feet under them. Oh yeah, but it's a complex situation. Oh, oh, it's been 3 months, but like it's a hard job, 6 months, a year. And I'm not type of people who are like ethical or values issues. Those are easy. Those are easy. I've had a few of those and fire them right away. That's simple. The harder is, it's just taking time. What I've learned is the right executive for the job makes an impact right away. And that's really high bar, but to those as much as given, much as expected, right? And so, and like if I have a ineffective executive in that job, I'm costing the team. It sucks to work for a bad boss. Not a bad person. Or even a bad person. I'd make that survey. But an ineffective boss who is not as effective as you, my gosh, this is why like working in companies sucks. Because people work for people that are less effective than them. And so what I figured out is in week one, in month one, I better be hearing good things from especially from their team. That's the most important. So like I give you an example. The best example, because it's the best hire I ever made, and it's very on paper obvious why. Chuck Ganapathi, who was my president, now the CEO of Gainsight, so he's amazing. My successor, he's so good, and he's going to take the company to massive levels. The first week, it was like he started on Monday. I think the Tuesday there was like an offsite, or maybe the Monday there was an offsite on AI, and then the next day there was an offsite on something else, and he was all over it. He was super deep. He was leading discussions. He was he's so perfect for that job. And every great hire I've made in like week 1 or 2, people are like, wow. The team was saying, oh my gosh, and if you don't get that, if I don't get that, I'm probably not on the right track.
I had an office mate when I graduated from college on New York on Wall Street, and I would work the 70 hours a week. He would work 105. And I was like, dude, what are you doing? But at month 2, his reputation was just like, mine was good. His was like everything. I think what you just prompted to me is an idea. I remember you mentioned your coach early. Yep. I feel like when people start a new job, they're like, okay, I can figure it out and then I'll get coaching. I feel like the ultimate time to get it, which nobody does because it has to come out of their pocket, is like, how do I get coaching on the first 3 weeks or 4 weeks? It's I've had a great exec coach my entire career. I turn her on and off, but she's always got context. And so I feel like that moment, people wing it, right? And they shouldn't.
If you had one thing, it's get a great coach. Literally, forget everything else I said. Get a great coach.
Nick, thank you so much for this. I have 5 pages of notes. The reason you see the top of my head a lot is because I'm taking notes furiously.
Super fun.
I'm excited to keep the conversations going, hear where you go, and keep the friendship going too, man.
Sounds great, Andy. Thanks so much.
Thank you.